This simple 5-page change to the Constitution of Florida would fundamentally transform the finance system and the revenue system that we use to fund not only our government in the state, but also many of our local government partners. In essence, depending on how you would fill in some of the blanks in this proposed House Joint Resolution, we could eliminate or mostly eliminate all property taxes in Florida. The last time legislation similar to this was discussed and deliberated, it was in the year 2007. I believe Speaker Rubio had the opportunity to lead the chamber at that time. Here's what I would ask of our committee members. We're not going to go through this section by section, but in essence, this would eliminate property taxes or create a super property tax exemption and then replace that revenue in a revenue neutral manner with an enhancement to the state sales taxes. So this would be a tax swap that would, in my estimation, do a great deal to benefit the people of Florida. To boil down the concepts that are within this 5 pages of language, I would ask you to turn to your next tab. It's a chart. And so here are different ways that the committee could choose, or members could choose, to replace property tax revenue with sales tax revenue. If you look on the right under the column that says 100% exemption, this would be the type of property tax reduction that would simply, for everyone, for every parcel size, for every dollar amount, eliminate property taxes. If we were to do that and do nothing to expand the tax base, do nothing to create new taxes, one would, in a revenue neutral way, and again, this is an estimation, have to raise the state sales taxes by 6.72%, which would more than double the state sales tax. I remember being a staff member as Speaker Rubio and his colleagues were advancing proposals to eliminate property taxes in the state of Florida. I will share with you one of the ways where I think that proposal hit some snags. When we compared these tax savings of a typical Florida family, you know, two folks married, living together, making, you know, an average income, who own their home, to the tax savings that would be realized by someone with a $30 million palatial estate, we saw some disparity because those who had the most realized the largest tax exemption. And so there are 3 other options here that I think make the property tax swap concept more palatable and more accessible to more of our working class Floridians and those who have made smart investments and have chosen to make the sizable investment that they've accumulated through their net worth into their real personal property. So if you look at the second option where it says $1 million exemption, what that means is that all property in the state of Florida that was valued under $1 million would not have property taxes associated with those parcels. If we were to do that, you might want to make a note of this in your file, 98% of parcels in the state of Florida would not have a property tax burden attached to what they were doing. So we would cover 98% of parcels with a $1 million exemption. To see that to fruition, one would have to swap that property taxes with a 4.93% increase, almost a 5% increase in the state sales taxes, raising the state sales tax to 11%. You can scale that concept down to a $750,000 exemption. That would cover 97% of all parcels in the state of Florida, but would only require a 4.72% increase to the state sales taxes. Scaling down further to a $500,000 exemption, we could cover 95% of all parcels in Florida and would have to then swap for a 4.36% increase in the state sales taxes. So that is a top-line view of the macroeconomics of a property tax swap. One can imagine there's a number of workability issues and challenges that would have to be addressed. Our local communities, through the legislation that was in the prior tab, would have to, we'd have to set a base property tax rate for them so that we could then distribute the enhanced state sales tax dollars back to those local communities to fill the budgets that would be depleted from property taxes no longer being a source of local government revenue. Now, Some have suggested in prior years, and even some of our colleagues on this committee and throughout the legislature, that one would not simply have to do a pure swap of all property taxes for an enhancement to the sales tax. Instead, it would be possible to expand the tax base. The last time an expansion of the tax base to services was seriously considered by the legislature, I believe the year was 1987. Is that correct, Dr. Langston? Yeah, about 1987. And that would be an expansion of the tax base to include services. I'll share with the committee that I'm very reticent about asking you to vote to tax activities that are not currently taxed now. I think that there are many Floridians who would find that to have substantial shock value, but that's a concept I know, Representative Van Zandt, that you have worked on in the past because you share a commitment to seeing property taxes ultimately eliminated. So there are some who believe that expanding the tax base through services would be an attractive option, and this legislation that I've provided in your committee work packet highlights just some of those proposals. Representative Van Zandt, did you file the legislation that would have created the tax swap that you and I have spent some time discussing, or was that something you had just workshopped?
No, I didn't file it, have not workshopped it. I wrote the bill. And relative to your comment regarding the sales and service tax, we worked out the numbers. Dr. Langston actually helped us with the preliminary numbers there that we ended up working with. If we implemented a sales tax that we have today and implemented a service tax that's equal to the sales tax, meaning for you guys that if you went to Men's Warehouse and bought a suit, you'd pay our sales tax on that, and if you got a haircut on the way home, you would pay the same amount of tax on the haircut. You'd get the sales and service tax joint. Our sales tax would then rise to around 8.5 cents, and you would have absolutely no ad valorem tax on properties in the state of Florida, both residential and commercial, which would bring in more jobs. People would start moving their businesses here. The education would have more money than they ever hoped to have under our present situation. And so it is the sales and service tax combination. When this was tried again back in '89, I think it was, when Governor Martinez was here, the legislature passed the service tax, and the fact was the legislature did not offer anything in return. It was just a revenue-raising scheme which didn't fly with the public. But if we were to give service tax in lieu of all ad valorem tax on property, nobody would have a property tax in Florida. And I've fielded this. I've held over 100 town hall meetings, and the people really would accept that.
Thank you for that summary, Representative Van Zandt. So one can see that one would not simply have to engage in a pure swap with sales tax revenue, but there are other options. I don't have all those options scored because one could undertake a variety of permutations with some services or not others if expanding the tax base was the desire of the committee in order to see that property taxes were ultimately eliminated. I can tell that Representative Workman says that you can tax haircuts all you want, right, Chairman Workman? That's right. Perhaps Representative Tobias, with his well-coiffed hair, would not agree to such a proposal. So here's my thought, members. As we're discussing property taxes, think in these terms. One large bucket is the concept of completely rewriting the constitutional provisions that deal with ad valorem taxation to eliminate property taxes altogether. But there are some more humble efforts that this committee has considered and that others have considered over time that I think would provide some property tax relief without completely rewriting that system and regime. So if you turn to the next section of your committee packet, the Save Our Homes and recapture issue, I'm going to recognize the Vice Chairman to update our new committee members and refresh our returning committee members on the change to the recapture rule, or the repeal of the recapture rule. And I have to note, before I give you the microphone, Representative Rodriguez, that we appreciate Representative Berman's good advice on this issue and her suggestions that she made as we workshopped a repeal of the recapture rule during our last legislative session. Representative Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And for those of you who are new to the committee, we workshop